People who practice emotional control and self-regulation consistently make better long-term decisions, experience stronger relationships, and achieve higher levels of personal and professional growth because they are not reacting from impulse, but acting from intention. When someone wrongs you, the immediate urge is to respond, to correct, to strike back in a way that feels equal to the pain you received. That reaction feels natural, almost automatic, as if your mind is trying to restore balance by force. But that instinct, while powerful, is not where real strength lives. Real strength is quieter, more deliberate, and far more disciplined than any emotional reaction could ever be. It asks you to pause in a moment where everything inside you is telling you to act. It challenges you to choose control over chaos, clarity over impulse, and direction over distraction. Inner power begins the moment you stop making your emotions dependent on someone else's behavior. As long as your state of mind is tied to what they did, said, or think, you are still giving them influence over your life. The shift happens when you decide that your identity will not be shaped by someone else's actions, but by your own standards. That decision creates distance between stimulus and response, and in that space, you gain the ability to choose who you become next. Revenge may feel like justice, but in reality, it keeps you emotionally connected to the very thing you are trying to escape. It anchors your attention to the past and drains energy that could have been invested in building something meaningful. Inner power, on the other hand, redirects that energy. It transforms frustration into focus, anger into discipline, and disappointment into clarity. Instead of asking how to respond to them, you begin asking how to elevate yourself. That question alone changes everything. There's a level of confidence that cannot be faked, and it comes from knowing you are in control of your reactions. When you choose not to engage in negativity, not because you cannot, but because you see beyond it, you create a presence that people can feel without a single word being spoken. It is the difference between reacting to every challenge and rising above it. One is driven by emotion, the other by purpose. This does not mean ignoring what happened or pretending it did not matter. It means acknowledging it fully while refusing to let it dictate your direction. It means learning from the experience without becoming defined by it. The moment becomes a lesson instead of a limitation. And through that process, you begin to understand that your power was never in controlling others, but in mastering yourself. When you operate from inner power, your actions become intentional rather than reactive. You no longer waste time proving your worth to those who fail to see it. You invest that time into becoming someone whose value is undeniable, not because others validate it, but because it is built on consistency, discipline, and self-respect. That kind of growth cannot be shaken by external opinions or temporary setbacks. The truth is, the strongest response you can give to being wronged is not retaliation, it is elevation. It is choosing to rise in a way that makes the situation irrelevant. Not because you forgot, but because you outgrew the need to respond at individuals who consistently pause before reacting and choose intentional responses, build stronger reputations, earn deeper trust, and develop greater emotional resilience because their behavior reflects clarity rather than impulse. What happens to you is often outside your control, but what you do next is entirely yours. In that small space between event and response, something powerful is formed. Most people overlook that moment because it feels insignificant, but it is where identity is shaped in real time. Every reaction is a vote for the kind of person you are becoming. Not the person you claim to be, not the person you hope to be, but the person your actions prove you are. When you are wronged, challenged, or misunderstood, the situation tests more than your patience. It tests your standards. Anyone can respond when emotions are calm and conditions are easy. The real measure of character shows up when emotions rise and clarity fades. That is when your response carries weight. That is when people see whether you are guided by principles or pulled by pressure. There is a difference between reacting and responding, and that difference is everything. A reaction is immediate, emotional, and often driven by ego. It seeks relief in the moment, but rarely creates progress. A response, on the other hand, is thoughtful, intentional, and aligned with long-term values. It may take longer, but it builds something far more important than temporary satisfaction. It builds credibility. Your identity is not formed in moments of comfort. It is revealed in moments of tension. When something goes wrong, when someone crosses a line, when expectations collapse, you are presented with a choice. You can allow the moment to dictate your behavior, or you can let your values define your response. One leads to regret, the other leads to growth. There is a quiet discipline in choosing not to react immediately. It requires awareness to recognize what you're feeling and strength to hold that feeling without acting on it. That pause is not weakness, it is control. It creates space for perspective, and perspective allows you to act in a way that aligns with who you truly want to be. Without that pause, you are simply repeating patterns rather than creating progress. People often think identity is built through big decisions, but it is actually shaped by small, repeated responses. The way you handle frustration, the way you speak under pressure, the way you carry yourself when things do not go your way. These moments accumulate. Over time, they form a pattern, and that pattern becomes your reputation, both in your own eyes and in the eyes of others. If your goal is to be respected, trusted, and taken seriously, then your responses must reflect consistency. Not perfection, but consistency. It is not about getting it right every time. It is about being aware enough to learn, adjust, and improve with each experience. That awareness transforms mistakes into lessons and setbacks into opportunities for growth. There will always be situations that push your limits, people who misunderstand you, and moments that challenge your patience. Those are not interruptions to your path. They are part of it. Each one gives you another chance to define yourself through your actions. Each one asks the same question in a different form. Who are you when it matters? Your response answers that question every single time. People who practice deliberate silence and controlled communication are often perceived as more confident, more authoritative, and more emotionally intelligent because they choose their words with intention rather than reacting to every situation. Silence has a reputation problem. It is often mistaken for hesitation, uncertainty, or even fear. In a world that rewards noise and constant expression, choosing not to speak can look like falling behind. But that assumption misses something important. Silence, when used intentionally, is not the absence of power. It is a demonstration of it. It shows that you are not controlled by the need to respond, explain, or defend yourself in every moment. When someone challenges you, misunderstands you, or tries to provoke a reaction, the expectation is that you will engage, that you will step into the conflict and match their energy. Most people do because silence feels uncomfortable. It creates space, and in that space there is uncertainty. But that discomfort is exactly where strength is built. Because choosing silence in a moment where you could speak is not passive. It is active restraint. There is a difference between having nothing to say and choosing not to say it. One comes from lack, the other from control. Strategic silence is rooted in awareness. It requires you to understand the situation, assess the outcome of engagement, and decide whether speaking will move you forward or simply pull you deeper into something that does not serve you. Not every conversation deserves your input. Not every accusation deserves your defense. When you remove yourself from unnecessary noise, you begin to see things more clearly. You notice patterns in behavior, in tone, and intention. You start to recognize when people are seeking resolution and when they are simply seeking reaction. And once you see that difference, your choices change. You stop participating in conversations that lead nowhere. You stop giving energy to moments that do not align with your direction. Silence also changes how others perceive you. When you do not rush to fill every gap with words, your voice carries more weight when you do speak. People listen differently, they pay attention. Because your words are not constant, they become intentional. And intention creates impact. It shifts the dynamic from reacting to leading. From explaining to demonstrating, there is a level of confidence in being misunderstood and still choosing not to correct it immediately. That does not mean you accept false narratives. It means you understand that not every misunderstanding requires immediate correction. Sometimes clarity comes with time, through consistency, through actions that speak louder than any explanation. Silence, in those moments, allows truth to surface without force. This approach requires patience. It requires trust in yourself and in your path. Because silence does not deliver instant validation. It does not provide the immediate satisfaction that comes from winning an argument or proving a point. Instead, it builds something deeper. It builds presence, a kind of presence that does not rely on volume, but on certainty. Choosing silence is not about avoiding conflict. It is about selecting it wisely. It is about understanding that your energy is limited and where you invest it matters. When you speak, it should be because it serves a purpose, not because you feel pressured to respond. That shift alone changes the way you move through challenges. It places you in control, not just of your words, but of your direction. And in that control, you begin to realize that silence was never weakness, it was always a strategy waiting to be used. Individuals who channel setbacks into self-improvement consistently outperform those who dwell on negativity because they convert emotional energy into disciplined action and long-term progress. When someone wrongs you, the natural instinct is to look outward, to focus on what happened, who caused it, and how it made you feel. That focus can consume your attention if you let it. It pulls you into a cycle of replaying the moment, analyzing every detail, and searching for ways to respond. But there's a more powerful direction you can take. Instead of asking how to react, you ask how to grow. That shift changes the entire outcome. Growth redirects your energy. It takes what could have been wasted on frustration and turns it into something productive. Instead of investing time in proving someone wrong, you invest it in becoming better. Stronger habits, sharper thinking, deeper focus. These are not reactions, they are decisions. And each decision moves you forward, regardless of what happened behind you. There is something undeniable about progress. It speaks without needing permission. When you improve your skills, your mindset, and your discipline, you create results that do not require explanation. People notice the change, not because you announced it, but because it is visible in how you carry yourself and what you produce. Growth becomes a message that does not need words. This path is not easy. Growth demands consistency, especially when motivation fades. It requires you to show up on days when you would rather withdraw. It asks you to confront your weaknesses instead of avoiding them, but in doing so, it builds resilience. It teaches you that discomfort is not a barrier, it is a signal that you are moving in the right direction. When you commit to growth, you stop measuring your progress against others and start measuring it against your own potential. The comparison shifts from external to internal. You are no longer trying to keep up or prove something. You are focused on becoming something. That focus creates clarity. It removes distractions that once felt important and replaces them with priorities that actually matter. Growth also changes how you interpret challenges. What once felt like setbacks begin to look like opportunities, not because the situation itself changes, but because your perspective does. You begin to see that every difficulty carries a lesson, every failure carries feedback, and every obstacle carries a chance to improve. That mindset turns resistance into momentum. There is a quiet confidence that comes from knowing you are evolving. It does not need validation. It does not depend on recognition. It is built through repeated effort, through small wins that accumulate over time, and that confidence becomes your foundation. It allows you to move forward without hesitation, even when the path is uncertain. The most powerful response to being wronged is not to engage with the situation, but to outgrow it, to reach a point where it no longer holds weight in your decisions or your direction. That does not mean forgetting what happened. It means refusing to let it limit what is possible for you. Growth creates distance between who you were in that moment and who you are becoming. And as that distance grows, so does your strength, your clarity, and your control over the life you are building. People who learn to interpret emotional pain as feedback rather than final judgment develop greater resilience, make more adaptive decisions, and build stronger long-term mental strength because they respond with awareness instead of avoidance. Pain has a way of demanding attention. It interrupts your thoughts, shifts your focus, and makes everything feel heavier than it should. When you are hurt, whether emotionally or mentally, the instinct is to escape it, suppress it, or label it as something negative that should not exist. But pain is not random, and it is not meaningless. It carries information. It points to something that needs to be understood, not ignored. When something affects you deeply, it reveals where your expectations were placed, where your boundaries may have been crossed, and where your values are being challenged. That discomfort is not there to stop you, it is there to guide you. If you choose to listen instead of resist, pain becomes a source of clarity. It shows you what matters to you, what needs adjustment, and where growth is required. The problem is not the pain itself, the problem is how it is interpreted. When pain is seen as a sentence, it becomes limiting. It creates a narrative that says this is permanent, that this defines you, that this is where you stop. That interpretation leads to avoidance, hesitation, and sometimes even fear of moving forward. But when pain is seen as a signal, it becomes temporary and useful. It becomes something you can work with instead of something that controls you. There is strength in facing discomfort directly. It requires you to sit with what you feel without rushing to escape it. That process builds awareness. You begin to understand your reactions, your triggers, and your patterns. And once you understand them, you gain the ability to change them. Without that awareness, you are simply repeating the same responses in different situations. Pain also creates an opportunity to reset your direction. It forces you to evaluate what is working and what is not. It challenges assumptions and pushes you to reconsider choices that may not align with who you want to become. In that sense, pain is not just a reaction to the past. It is a tool for shaping the future. It encourages you to make decisions that are more aligned, more intentional, and more sustainable. Avoiding pain may feel like relief in the moment, but it often delays growth. What is not addressed tends to resurface, sometimes in stronger forms. Facing it, on the other hand, builds resilience. It teaches you that discomfort can be managed, understood, and eventually reduced through action and reflection. That lesson becomes valuable in every area of life, not just the situation that caused the pain. There is also a level of honesty that pain demands. It does not allow you to hide behind distractions or excuses. It brings attention to what is real, even when it is uncomfortable. That honesty is necessary for progress. Without it, change remains superficial. With it, change becomes meaningful and lasting. When you begin to treat pain as a signal, your relationship with it changes. It is no longer something to fear or avoid, but something to learn from. It becomes part of your process rather than an obstacle to it. And through that shift, you start to build a mindset that is not easily shaken by temporary challenges, because you understand that what you feel in the moment does not decide where you end up. It simply informs how you move forward. People who set clear personal boundaries and selectively invest their time and energy experience higher levels of focus, stronger relationships, and greater emotional stability because they protect what influences their mindset and direction. Access to you is more valuable than you think. Your time, your attention, your energy, your presence. These are not unlimited resources, yet most people give them away too easily, too quickly, and often to the wrong individuals. It happens out of habit, out of politeness, or out of the desire to be understood and accepted. But without intention, access becomes exposure, and exposure without boundaries leads to unnecessary influence. When you allow everyone into your space, you also allow their opinions, their expectations, and their behaviors to shape your environment. Over time, this creates noise. It becomes harder to think clearly, harder to stay focused, and harder to move in a direction that is truly your own. Not because you lack discipline, but because you are constantly adjusting to inputs that were never meant to guide you. Understanding that not everyone deserves access is not about arrogance. It is about awareness. It is recognizing that your environment directly affects your growth. The people you spend time with influence your standards, your habits, and your mindset. If that influence is misaligned, it slows you down. If it is intentional, it pushes you forward. The difference lies in who you allow close enough to have an impact. There is a common misconception that being open to everyone is a strength. In reality, unfiltered openness can become a liability. Without boundaries, you are more likely to tolerate behaviors that do not serve you, to engage in conversations that drain you, and to invest energy in situations that lead nowhere. Boundaries are not walls meant to isolate you. They are filters designed to protect your focus and your well-being. Saying no is one of the simplest ways to control access, yet it is one of the hardest things for people to do. It feels uncomfortable because it challenges the need to be liked or accepted. But every time you say yes to something that does not align with you, you are saying no to something that does. That trade-off adds up over time. Learning to say no with clarity, without guilt, is a skill that strengthens your direction. Access is also about consistency. It is not enough to set a boundary once and expect it to hold. It requires reinforcement through your actions. When people see that your standards do not change based on pressure or convenience, they begin to understand how to engage with you. And if they cannot meet those standards, they naturally create distance. That distance is not a loss, it is alignment. Choosing who has access to you also changes how you show up in your own life. When your energy is not scattered, your focus improves. When your focus improves, your decisions become clearer. And when your decisions are clear, your progress becomes more consistent. This is not about doing more, it is about doing what matters with the right people around you. There is a quiet confidence in knowing that you do not need to be available to everyone. It removes the pressure to respond to every message, attend every conversation, or explain every decision. You begin to operate with intention rather than obligation. And that shift creates space to think, to grow, and to build something meaningful without constant interruption. Because in the end, access is not about keeping people out. It is about letting the right people in and ensuring that your environment supports the direction you are committed to. Pursuing people who remain consistent in their actions and allow outcomes to unfold naturally are more likely to build lasting credibility, earn genuine respect, and maintain emotional stability because they rely on evidence over explanation. There is a strong temptation to correct every misunderstanding, to respond to every false assumption, and to defend yourself in every moment you feel misrepresented. It feels necessary, almost urgent, as if silence will be mistaken for weakness or agreement. But not every situation requires your immediate voice. Some require your patience, some require your consistency, and most importantly, some require time to reveal what words cannot. When you rush to explain yourself, you often enter a space where emotions are high and clarity is low. In that space, even the truth can be misunderstood. Not because it lacks value, but because the timing is wrong. Truth is most powerful when it is supported by consistent action. When your behavior aligns with your values over time, it becomes difficult for others to ignore what is real. That kind of truth does not need to be argued. It becomes visible. Time plays a role that no reaction can replace. It creates distance from the moment, allowing emotions to settle and perspectives to shift. What feels urgent today often becomes insignificant tomorrow, and what feels misunderstood now often becomes clear later. When you trust this process, you stop chasing immediate validation. You start focusing on long-term alignment. That shift reduces unnecessary conflict and preserves your energy for what truly matters. There is also a discipline in allowing things to unfold without interference. It requires you to let go of the need to control how others see you. That need can be exhausting because it is never fully satisfied. No matter how much you explain, there will always be interpretations outside your control. But when you focus on your actions instead of opinions, you create a foundation that is not easily shaken by external noise. Consistency becomes your strongest form of communication. The way you show up, the way you handle pressure, the way you treat others over time. These patterns tell a story that no single moment can define. When that story is clear, it speaks for itself. People begin to form their understanding based on what they observe, not what they are told. And that understanding carries more weight because it is built on evidence. Letting time and truth do the talking does not mean you avoid responsibility or remain silent in situations that require clarity. It means you choose your moments wisely. You speak when it adds value, when it brings resolution, and when it aligns with your principles. Outside of that, you allow your actions to carry the message. That balance creates strength without unnecessary noise. There will be moments where staying quiet feels uncomfortable, where not responding feels like losing control. But in reality, you are maintaining control. You are choosing not to be pulled into situations that do not serve your direction. That choice reflects confidence. It shows that you trust your process enough to let it unfold without constant interference. Over time, the combination of patience and consistency builds something powerful. It builds trust, not just with others, but within yourself. You begin to see that not every situation needs immediate resolution, and not every misunderstanding needs instant correction. Some things are better revealed through time, through patterns, through results that cannot be denied. Because when truth is supported by consistent action and given enough time to surface, it speaks louder than any explanation ever could.